Right, guys. Sorry. That's all right. We're ready? Everybody ready? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Borough of Oradell Planning Board. Tonight is July 1st, 7:30 p.m. Notice of this meeting was published in the official newspaper, prominent posted in Borough Hall, and filed with the clerk's office in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act. Mr. Kang, would you lead us in flag salute?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, on our agenda tonight, first item is approval of the planning board meeting minutes.
Roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have roll call, Mr. Deputy.
Mr. Forte? Here. Mr. Snyder? Here. Mr. Kang?
Here.
Mr. Hines?
Here.
Mr. Carnaval?
Here?
Mr. Scalcione? Here. Mr. Daring?
Here. Next item tonight is the approval of the planning board meeting minutes. This is our special meeting we had on June 24th. Has everyone had a chance to review that email? Do you have any questions or comments regarding the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for June 24th?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Anyone?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Depkin?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All against?
Actually, I read the minutes. I liked to have my comments at the very end. I think you took two sentences down to, 4 words. I expressed my displeasure. We have 4 pieces of correspondence I'd like to announce into the record tonight: a review letter, a property survey, architectural plans and site plans in conjunction with 208 Kinderkamak Road, which is coming up within our committee reports. So next we have subdivision, site drainage, and soil moving. Mr. Carnaval?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our first application is calendar number S-163-25, 208 Kinderkamak Road. I'll ask the applicant to come up.
Right up.
Okay. Make yourself comfortable at the table. The mic's right there, so you don't have to. And, sir, will you be the only person testifying on behalf of this application?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Giblin?
Raise your right hand, please. You swear or affirm any testimony given this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
State your name and spell your last name, please.
Alan Zenreich. It's Zenreich.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Sinridge, if you could just give an overview of your project.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think next week will be the 36th anniversary of us moving into town. We raised our kids here, and we decided after we retired that we were going to age in place in Oradell. Besides, once you learn how to spell Kinderkamak, there's no point in moving anyplace else. And we noted that the house is 120 years old. It does not have a bathroom on the first floor. And for that reason, for the last couple of years of my parents' life, they couldn't come visit us because they couldn't make it up to the bathroom. Well, my wife and I are approaching 73, and we want to spend another 20 years here. So we are going to add a bathroom on the first floor. Laundry is getting moved to the second floor where the laundry gets made. If all goes well, we will actually be applying for a permit for a small elevator. So we're trying to do this all quality of life thing, not looking to flip the house or anything like that. This is all long-term stay in Oradell. As I was mentioning to somebody before, 20-some odd years ago, I used to sit either in that seat or that seat on the planning board. So we're in it for the long term. Some of you may know my wife. She's the one that did the murals on the service station, and I was sort of tech support for all of that. So, and she's across the street right now, working, she's doing scenic decor on the opening musical for Bergen County Players. So the fact that we've got ties so close to the community was one of the reasons why we decided we just don't want to move. Was speaking with Mr. Debkin, we found out that we needed a tree permit. And because we have to take out two trees, and so we got that underway. We had the original survey had the garage in the wrong place in 1989, so we needed new surveys done, topographical surveys, you know, all of the things that are bringing us to this point. And when this thing gets approved, we can finally say to the general contractor, let's get moving, because everything's been waiting for this. So we're trying to get it done by the end of the year. I don't know if that's possible.
Very good. Thank you. We'll start with our professionals. Dave, you're up first.
Sure. So I'll just provide some additional information for the board's edification. So essentially, the applicant's here tonight for soil movement application. This is one of the ones that we kind of talk about, or have talked about, that is relatively minor in nature. If we could get the threshold changed, they wouldn't really be before us this evening. Essentially, they're just putting an addition on the back side of the property. As a result of that, the total soil movement is 131 cubic yards, which is what punts it here to the planning board this evening. As far as the proposed improvements, from our perspective, there's actually a minor decrease in the coverage on the property, so there's nothing that needs to be done from a stormwater perspective as far as the addition. The applicant did provide topographic information, existing and proposed, showing that with the proposed addition that's taking place, there will be no change to the existing drainage patterns at the property. Basically, you know, from what I see, it's relatively minor, with almost negligible impact to the surrounding areas as a result of the improvements here.
Thank you.
Sure.
Steve, any questions?
Nothing.
Okay. And Caroline, I know you didn't do a planning review, but do you have any questions? We always
No,
want to
thank
include you.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Giblin?
offer, but no, thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the board?
When are we changing the thresholds?
That's a very fair question, since I'm a member of the mayor and council, and we have to get on that. So hopefully soon.
Thank you, man.
Any other comments from members of the board? Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I'd like to open it up to the public if anybody has any questions or comments on this particular application. Okay, I'll close public. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve calendar number S-163-25, 208 Kinderkamack Road. Dave, I don't think there were any special conditions, right? Just straight?
No.
Okay.
Now, the only recommendation we had to the applicant was just with their discharge, their downspout, just make sure that they put something in place just so they don't get scouring, like washout and stuff. So just like a splash pad or
Okay.
something. But other than that, there was nothing,
Right.
nothing that needs to be noted for the record.
Great. And I'm sorry, who's second?
I second.
Thank you.
Mr. Kim.
Steve, roll call?
All in favor?
Aye.
All against?
Cooked?
Yep.
Good luck with your
Approved.
project. It looks
Thank you.
great.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we're moving on to our next application, calendar number 162-25, 420 Kinderkamack Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Board. Santo Alampi on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Chairman, we were here back at the May 6th hearing, and at that time, we put forth the various testimony and carried the matter. It was supposed to be back in June, but obviously the board had much more important work to be doing, as does every municipality. So we are here this evening. I had submitted a correspondent May 27th, so at the end of the May 6th hearing, all testimony had concluded on our case, and what was left open at the end of that hearing was essentially summation from myself and comment from the public. So I submitted a letter on May 27th. I believe the board has that letter. I've also submitted the transcript of May 6th, and the letter essentially outlines the variances being requested and then some of the various points that were left open or were discussed during the May 6th hearing, just to help the board in terms of what was agreed to by the applicant with respect to the application. One of the things I do want to point out for the board's edification is there was a parking space in that lower level that was of concern from a safety perspective. There was a question of whether the space could be eliminated or what could be done regarding it. So in our memo, we had Mr. Vergona as well as Mr. Costa go back and look at that potential conflict, and what we have done is we've converted that space to a compact space and provided a 3-foot stripe buffer area whereby the space allows the access out of that stairwell, and whoever's in the space, whether they're pulling in, pulling out, whatever the case may be, are not conflicted with the person coming out of the door. The person now has a 3-foot area striped off where they won't be interfering with the vehicular traffic. And as the board's aware, under section 246.6A2, you're allowed to designate up to 30% of the parking spaces as compact, and we're well below that threshold. So we thought that was the best route to go, so we've made that change, and we're willing to move in that direction. With respect to the other items that were covered, again, I think the May 27th letter sums it up succinctly, but it outlines those variances, and then with respect to the items that the applicant had agreed to, we list the 5 specific items, and I'm happy to read them into the record if you'd like.
Thank you.
First item is the generator had been removed, and hookup ties for a temporary generator, if needed during an emergency, have been added and agreed to. Second point was the stairwell parking space conflict, which I just described. The third item is the architectural plans and engineering plans have been coordinated to address any conflict regarding the EV spaces, so they'll be located and appropriately designated, and all in conformance with the various requirements. Directional and wayfinding signage, we've added some to the plan, and we'll be coordinating with the building department with respect to those items. It's our intent to do something attractive, but to make sure that everybody has the appropriate signage to get to where they need to get to. The fifth item is the applicant has agreed to work with the building department with respect to the streetscape along Kinderkamack. So that's something that we'll work with Mr. Demkin and his team on to coordinate that. With respect to the variance sought in connection with the application, we've identified the 5 variances: building coverage, building height, the deficiency of 4 parking spaces, and the maximum number of parking spaces in a row. You'll recall you're only allowed to have 10, and then there's supposed to be a landscaped island on surface parking. We're proposing 15 in a continuous row, so that is a variance. The last one is with respect to the lighting, but we've also agreed that we will put dimmers on the lighting and that we will allow monitoring, and if we need to lower the lighting for spillover after 6 months, we would address that. So, again, those are the comments in the memo. I'm prepared to provide a summation after we hear public comment, as well as address any of the comments from the public. The only other thing I'd say is, in light of the fact that all testimony has been submitted, I have excused the professionals. I didn't need them all here this evening since we weren't going to take any additional testimony.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to add to the list of the items that have been agreed to, is that the affordable units are going to have to meet very specific requirements as contained in the ordinance and UHAC requirements. There's going to need to be an administrative agent, et cetera. So while that wasn't noted in the letter, I do recall testimony to that, and I'm sure it will be covered in your summation, but I just want to make sure that we have all our bases covered, and I want to make sure that the record is clear with respect to that.
And Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that's not even something that I can negotiate, so of course we'll have to comply with that.
Okay.
We just want to make sure.
Alrighty. Before I open it up to the public, does anybody have any questions from our professionals? I know we didn't have any expert testimony tonight, but anything just from a clarification purpose?
I do not.
No.
No. Okay. Anybody on the board have any questions of clarification based upon the testimony that has taken place up until now?
I guess I have a question. So, in reviewing the variances for this application, they're all minor C variances. And I don't need to go through them, you just did. But the one that I'm concerned the most with is the maximum building coverage. So this is the size of the building as in regards to the size of the lot. The site calls for 40%, and you're proposing 49%. I calculated that out to be roughly 3,800 square feet above what is required. And if you can you just describe to us why would it be beneficial for us to allow you that waiver or that variance?
So I would say that I think both Mr. Costa, Mr. Vergona, and of course our planner, Mr. Height, went through the detail with respect to that building coverage and how, while the building coverage exceeds what's permitted, the impervious coverage is under what's permitted. I believe they all laid out the additional stormwater management that we've taken and put into the project. And I think one of the most significant parts of the project with respect to building coverage has to do with the fact that we are a corner lot. And I believe Mr. Height testified extensively to the fact that we're preserving all of the other bulk standard setbacks. And when you balance all of that together, in order for the building to carry the corner, we believe that the coverage is able to be granted under the positive and negative criteria. So I know that he referred to and gave testimony with respect to both positive and negative criteria, as well as going through the master plan. Would it be appropriate for me to provide that testimony? Obviously, but I believe that Mr. Height went through all of that in pretty good detail at the May 6th hearing. So I hope that adequately explains our position.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any clarification? So with that, I'll open it up to the public.
David Banfield. Enhancing a town is what 80 Prior Court in Oradell. Enhancing a town is what responsible development is all about. Ideally, it's what zoning and especially clear and unambiguous master planning should largely be about. While zoning and planning ordinances may attempt to encourage appropriate aesthetics, it seems difficult to codify. Developers develop. It's their business, their livelihood, and doing projects in many different localities, they necessarily don't reside in most of those towns. Moving on to the next project, next town. I understand that may not be the case here. And I believe the property was acquired through a private sale by Bank of America's landowner. I appreciate the inside track. My wife and I made an offer on our Oradell home the day we saw it and the day before it was to go on the multiple listing service, Advantage Banfield. That was uncommon in 1984. It's a certainty this lot will be developed, improved. Perhaps more retail space will create a snowball effect, and all the currently empty retail locations in town will be filled, and that would be great. I had a bumper sticker made up which read, "Save capitalism, end financialization." We've reached a point where seemingly everything is financialized, turned to profit making. Homes are increasingly seen not as places to live, but rather as investment vehicles. Home mortgages and student college debt are securitized, bundled, and sold to investors. Even our personal health data and internet clicks, our very attention, generate income streams. I don't particularly like it, but it's not against the law. One thing I'd prefer not be financialized, though, is the character of a town. I think it's safe to say that almost everyone who has bought a home in Oradell or has chosen to stay in the one they grew up in has done so for the schools, yes, also for the overall character of the town, and of course, Troop 36. In my 40-some years here, I have learned Oradell may be small, but it is also deep. I respect the expense and care that has gone into the submission of this proposed project, especially the full color rendering, as it gives many of us occasion to consider the proposal's scale and suitability. I've not found a single person whose reaction was positive. But this presents an opportunity for the developer to avoid a construction their fellow Oradellians would resent. I have respect for the professionals who have patiently given testimony, particularly regarding the predicted traffic impact. But I disagree with the conclusion that this proposal would not significantly impact local congestion and add complications. There are just 6 living units on my block, and it's not unusual to see at least 7 deliveries a day from Amazon, FedEx, UPS, food deliveries. My not inconsiderable gut tells me traffic complications would be significant. Fewer living units, less so. Further, while retail activity could encourage greater use of Shiraw Park, I feel the sheer bulk of the proposed building might dwarf it. It's unreasonable not to expect development, and although we may not welcome every change, it can be positive as well. I encourage the Planning Board to require, if it can, a performance bond to avoid a debacle like the in limbo project in Emerson I call Tyvek Towers. I expect the Planning Board will scrutinize very carefully any variances occasioned by the proposed development scale. If a smaller project cannot provide a reasonable return for the investor, perhaps the purchase was ill-advised. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, yet it somehow feels to me that we're at a figurative and literal crossroads, a community development crisis point, if you will, which offers risk as well as opportunity. I appeal to the applicant to reimagine this development into something Oradell residents would embrace, something we'd want to bestow with an award. Thank you.
Jill Barbaries, 652 Orchard Street. I don't have
What's your last name?
B-A-R-B-A-R-I-S-E.
Thank you.
I don't have a speech like Mr. Banfield had, but I do have concerns about my block, which is the block of Chase Bank. And particularly, was there any discussion about how the traffic is going to be diverted from this proposal? Was there anything discussed? Because I used to live on Oakley, which is a quiet cul-de-sac. I moved to Orchard, and I was very much surprised at the speeding that goes on up and down that block. It's a cut-off street. I had already alerted the town, and the only person they pulled over was an Amazon, unfortunately. But there's a lot of traffic there, especially before school, after school, parents avoiding the Oradell Kindercomac light. And I'm really concerned, where is this traffic going to go when it comes out of this? it obviously can't go on Oradell Ave. That's backed all the way up to Grand Street. Anything east of Kinderkamak is a disaster for those people there trying to cut through. Where is this traffic going to go? How are they going to get out of this lot? Has anything been discussed about it? No? Do I get any answers, or is just no?
Well, we can only respond to what's been testified by the experts, and there was a traffic report that was presented to the board.
Okay. And is the traffic going to be diverted onto Oradell Ave, or is it going to be on Kinderkamak coming up to Orchard, leading more traffic and school traffic? Do we know? That's my concern. So the professionals know this, and it's already been discussed?
It has at earlier meetings. And there's no diversion of traffic. The traffic will go where the cars need to get to based upon the ingress and egress of the...
Right, because I know when they come out of Eldon Street, they can only turn right. So, I mean, or even by where the post office, you can only turn right. So when they make that turn coming out of the post office, most likely they're going to come up Orchard, where we are already facing problems as a cutoff street. And I would just like it to be considered, especially with children and the school so close. I just personally think it's too big for the character of Oradell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Latsunas. I live at 50 Beverly Road in the Manor section of Oradell. I'm going to be brief tonight and probably just to the point. I know you guys usually say that I talk a lot, but here's my comment. This sort of development with underground or under building parking is undesirable to the town, as stated by Mr. Burgess, who is a city planner, had a representative that stated it, that this was an undesirable thing to have in the town, an underground and under building parking. The administration never took up upon it, and we've been talking about it since 2017. This property also is too dense for this parcel of land. And that's one of the reasons, because the parking is under the building. So when you put parking under a building, you get more units and more space for the building. Okay, so it is also dense. This creates a density in population. The more people we have, the more dense we have. And this parcel of land with standards of our community in Oradell does not comply with the way we live here. It's a different type of life we have here. We don't have a dense type of life. This is not a city. This is a small town. The right unit density should not be more than 22 units for a building like this, as I calculated it, using the methods that I had calculated before on another project at 66 Kinderkamak Road, which was shot down. Incidentally, it was by the same architect who is doing this project also. And he had underground parking and under building parking there too. So he's going along with the same thing, which was denied by Superior Court. Okay. This would be the first building of its kind and would lead the town to make an additional 4 buildings just like it to satisfy our affordable housing. To satisfy our affordable housing, which I've stated other times, we would need 5 buildings of 35 units to satisfy our required amount of 177 units. this is not Oradell. I urge the board to vote not to allow this building plan as is presently presented for approval. Please. This would be a shock to the community and a shock in the culture of our town. Thank you.
How you doing? Tommy Beltoff, 655 Fletcher Ave, Oradell. After reviewing everything, I just have three concerns. The first of which is parking. I listened to the traffic study. They cited 152 municipal spots in VFW, 14 spaces Schrock Park, 24 in the small lot east of the tracks. On average, the Oradell train station sees 212 riders. So right there, you're short if you have commuters taking up all those spots. So I asked where do the cars park. You're already short on the parking requirements by 4 spots, and that's not really and that's relying on municipal parks for the quote unquote retail. Also, I have 3 kids. I went to kindergarten orientation this past week or 2 weeks ago, and I was told that there's 821 students in OPS, the largest grammar school in Bergen County. And I ask, if families move into these 35 units, what's the impact on the schools? What's the impact on the infrastructure? You can't discriminate against who occupies these units. It could be, I have two girls that share a room. A bedroom could have two students. The number is not just the number of units, it's exponential in terms of impact on the school. And then finally, traffic. I think Mrs. Barbarese cited, the impact on Orchard. Everyone knows if you make a left on Orchard, my girlfriend, now wife, lived up the hill, so I know this, but if you go to turn left, you shut down traffic. If the deliveries, and Mr. Banfield cited, to have one delivery zone for 35 units plus retail, if an Amazon truck is there and there will be multiple throughout the day, where does the UPS truck go and where does the FedEx truck go? And those guys are going to pull over for ease of convenience. They have routes to hit, delivery quotas, etc. So when you pull up on Orchard, on Kinderkamek, and you are making a left and you're waiting for traffic, and the delivery trucks inevitably pull up on Kinderkamek, that backs up right into Oradell Ave, which is not only a traffic nightmare, but it's really just unsafe in general for the residents and for the other drivers on the road. So I just ask that the board consider these items when considering something of this scale, and maybe there's something, I agree, something has to be developed there. I'm not against that, but that's within the realm and doesn't require so many variances or overuse. That's it.
Name is Tom Beltoff. That was my father who just spoke. That's my son. 74 Beechwood Road. I live on the other side of the tracks, and it's important to point that out. I know the developer does as well, but the state does not classify this as a large development. You all know that. You've heard the testimony, but this is a large development for Oradell, New Jersey. This is not Hackensack. This is not Emerson. This is not Paramus. Bill Page, who I have ultimate respect for, I'm good friends with Bill Page, gave a traffic report, which is great. They correlated the number of vehicles that used Bank of America, versus the number of vehicles that are going to be used in a new development. Great correlation. Same number, approximate number, I think he testified that. But I take exception to that. And the reason I take exception to that, and this is where the other side of the tracks come. Bank of America opens from 9 to 3, They're open one day, I think, till 4. Monday through Friday, they're open 9 to 12 on Saturday, 9 to 3, key, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m., Oradell Avenue is backed up from Grant Street all the way to the S-turn into the Milford. The other side of Grant Street is almost backed up to the turn on Sunset every single workday. Banks close at 3. Guess what? Rush hour, 3 to 7 p.m. at night, the same traffic nightmare. So although Bill points out, and again, I have respect for Bill, again, I'm personal friends with Bill, the timing of that traffic is going to be a nightmare. Left-hand turn from Orchard onto Oradell Avenue, okay? My suggestion to the mayor and council, you better increase the amount of police force you have because there's going to be many more accidents on that road. That is a nightmare at rush hour in the morning. It is a nightmare at rush hour at night. Everybody is in a rush to go nowhere, okay? You know that? We all live that every day. The other point, which Dave Banfield pointed out, I think FedEx, UPS, Amazon comes to my house 10 times a day, okay? I have 13 grandkids, okay? I get packages like, you take 38 units in that building. Built into their budgets, they don't give a crap about parking tickets, okay? It's built into their cost of operations, okay? They're going to park in Beltran, and they may park on Oradell Avenue. They may park on Kinderkamak to deliver those packages. That is a nightmare, okay? And again, the traffic study, look, I can get a traffic expert to say things completely contrary. I think that is a main driver for the board to seriously consider how much more can we absorb, okay? Look, I like development, okay? I'm a CFO. I get involved with development projects and M&A deals all the time. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a lawyer. They presented a nice case. But we really need to consider the impact to this town. At what point is it we're going to say enough is enough? Again, I think that project should be developed, but it's way too big for a 0.9 acre site, 38 units, parking, I'm also a 40-year New York commuter on the trains, okay? And it was testified about how this is going to be a great commuter, okay? Trains from New York to New York from Oradell in the afternoon, okay? If you want to take your wife or your spouse or your best friend or whatever, to a show or go someplace, okay? Here's the trains to New York from Oradell. 424, 947. You just missed the Broadway show. You got to get on the 424 or 1238 at night. Okay. Come from to Oradell from New York. Okay. You want to go to a hockey game. You want to go see the Rangers. Okay. You better get on the 424. You may make the drop of the puck. However, coming home, you're not going to make the 641. You're not going to make the 720. You're not going to make the 817. You're not going to make the 9:30 unless you leave early. You can get on the 11:06, okay, but gets you into Oradell about 12 o'clock, okay? That may be a commuting position for some of the people that live there, but that's not a commuting building. That is a driving building. We all drive in Bergen County, New Jersey, okay? Again, how many people in this room commute mass transit? Anybody on the board? Okay. Not many, okay? You all drive, okay? How many people in their homes have 2 cars, okay? It's like that's the way we live, and that's not going to change. COVID, okay? My office shut down, But what happened in COVID is it's coming back, okay? If you don't get to the small lot, which is the lot I get into, by the 7:51 train in the morning, it's full, okay? You got to go to the back lot. The back lot used to fill up. If you didn't get into the 8:14 train, it was full. It was packed. More and more companies, my company's demanding 5 days a week now. COVID's over. Wake up, okay? More and more people are going to be taking the train, but more and more people that don't live in this unit are going to be driving their car, that aren't driving a car, parking to their entitled space as an Oradell resident. So look, there's a lot of good testimony here. I'm not arguing with the developer, the engineer. They did a good job. But I think the board really needs to say, go back to the drawing board and cut the size of this project. Thank you very much.
Sam Tripsis, 327 Maple Avenue. In 1965, the Bank of America building was built as a People's Bank, and it was a ribbon cutting. The mayor, Wendell, at the time, attended. People were very proud of the design. It matches the Chase Bank, which matches the firehouse, which matches the town hall. I'm glad this is up here, the rendering, because that does not match Oradell. I see some brick in there, but there's a lot of materials. So I'm a firm believer of adaptive reuse. And what they're doing with banks these days is they're converting them. A lot of them have become restaurants. Very attractive. You make use of the vault or whatever, the teller's booth. I've been to one in Philadelphia like that. So I just think that this is short-sighted and missed opportunity to be building housing at that location, considering what I've heard also about the traffic. You're putting a population downtown. And what we, in the 2018 master plan update, one thing was consistent. People did not want a transit village, and I've heard that by the applicant's attorney. So we were against that. I don't know anybody who said, let's build housing in the downtown. So here we are, building housing in the downtown. Not consistent with everything else. So I would say it has parking, it has the village green, a nice view of the river. Why not take what's there? Utilize the existing structure. But all this was discussed in the master plan, as well as going maximum 2 stories, one level of retail and one level of residential. No one wanted 3 stories, and here we are again. It was 35 feet. And it was proposed 42 feet, but people pushed back. So we stayed at 35 with 2 stories on the east side. It was never really discussed where it was going to end. They just said all of east side is verbal in the minutes. All of east side stay 2 stories. On the west, it was 3 stories, and that was the compromise. But the public came. We filled the rooms. We filled the upstairs, and there was tons of opposition. So I just don't know, I don't understand why, after all that, hearing from the residents, that we would be considering something like this at this time. Thank you.
Good evening. Deborah Lynch, 456 Kinderkamack Road. I'll probably be repeating a lot of what has been said already, but please bear with me. I'm here tonight to urge you all against the construction of the proposed apartment building. This project does not reflect the character, the safety, or the planning standards of our town. First and foremost, the building is far too large, as we can see up on the screens. It towers over every other structure in town and completely disrupts the scale and the feel of our community. It also clashes with our town's traditional architecture, and the removal of 3 long-standing trees tarnished the charm. The mayor, in his May 13th mayor and council meeting, issued a proclamation saving trees for Arbor Day. Beyond aesthetics, the practical impacts are serious. Increased traffic on already busy roads in Oradell Avenue and Kinderkamack Road will worsen the congestion and raise safety concerns. The proposal also fails to provide adequate and convenient parking, forcing overflow onto neighboring streets and actively taking away from our commuters and other residents. Even more concerning is the lack of proper emergency vehicle access. The design does not account for the space needed by fire trucks, ambulances, or their employees to attend to an emergency, but having a literal trap door as its Band-Aid solution. Safety should have no substitute, especially considering the proposed threats of nearby gas station and proximity to the residences. Let's not forget, this development violates several town ordinances. From height limits to density and setback requirements, this project simply doesn't follow the rules we all agreed to uphold. This is not responsible development. It's an outsized, unsafe, and out-of-place proposal. Let's protect our town's identity and safety. I respectfully ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Sure.
Let's watch the chords.
Want to mention the time that Mr. Dressel
Yes,
arrived?
thank you.
It's 8:15. Mr. Dressel has arrived.
Thank you.
Yes, I have to go next. My name is Douglas Wu, and I live in 655 Orchard Street. I'm right in that place right there. I just heard this news yesterday, and I just had to come. I haven't done my homework here. That area is, I've been resident here for 3 years. So far, I love it. I love this town. Being a lovely resident here, owning a house here, it's really wonderful. But one thing that I learned is the same thing. What everyone's saying is traffic, and that intersection on that Oradell Avenue, going across from the Kindergarten Road. I have 2 children. I have one son and daughter. They are both in high school. That's the reason why I moved here. Main point, but cutting through that traffic is really enormous pain that I had to go through every day. And that area is already heavily occupied with the traffic coming through other towns as well. So, this is not the local street for only for this town. But that's the main street that comes from every town, try to cross that street. And really, I have to make left turn from there, coming from Oradell to go down to the Howard. Sometimes I have to jeopardize my life to make that left turn. I don't understand. This is the major intersections that doesn't have left turn signal coming from Edison's, coming from Howard, this town, to going down to the river edge. I don't know why they do that. We already have train station there. It's already heavily occupied with the buildings there, and I'm pretty sure you have a building built up. I'm only here for 3 years. I saw recently they built a complex behind from front of the Shell gas station there. So I don't know if that 38,000 square feet 3-store building, that's unthinkable. Unthinkable that imagining people coming out from there, creating more busy traffic in that area, that is absurd. And I don't know if you consider a small building instead of a bigger building here, I might consider, but that size of building is a no-no, and that's my hearing. I'm here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen Day, 30-plus year resident of Oradell. My address is 457 Demarest Avenue. Thanks, everybody, for letting us have the opportunity to share with you our thoughts about this development. So, a few things. I took the opportunity to either listen to or read all of the testimony related to this matter. And there are a few things I think that I wanted to point out, really 3 in particular. First, right, because the applicant is asking for multiple variances, there needs to be an analysis of cost-benefit, which I'd like to address. Secondly, I believe there's a need for additional analysis, and you can hear a lot of that from some of the comments in the room, particularly related to the traffic. And then lastly, I have some suggestions for the planning board as you all think about your action, approval, denial, next steps with respect to the application. So Since the developer, is coming to the planning board requesting several variances, the board needs to consider if the benefits of the project outweigh the detriments. And to the extent there are detriments, have they been sufficiently dealt with? Okay? So let's just talk about not all of, but I would, in my mind, some of the major variances that the applicant is asking for. First, they're asking for a height variance, 10% more than what is allowed. Second, as Mr. Darien mentioned, they're asking for what I would call a very significant floor area ratio coverage variance. So basically, the floor area that they're asking for with respect to this building exceeds what is permitted under our ordinances for that particular property. The property is much bigger than what our ordinances provide for. And as you look at the drawings, and we all know the town, right, this building will dwarf everything else in that area. I think we all know that. So then we think about what are the positives, right? Think about positives, we think about negatives. So what are the positives for the town? We do get a few affordable housing units, so that's a positive. The property, I would agree too, needs to be developed appropriately at some point, right? So we go from a vacant building to, mixed use, commercial, residential, and presumably our tax base goes up, the ratables goes up. So in my mind, those are the positives. What are the negatives, right? I would say substantial increase in traffic in what is the busiest intersection in town. This is, I would say, not just a nuisance issue, but a quality of life issue and a safety issue, right? We all know we've had pedestrian fatality in town. Pedestrians being, hit by cars in town. Multiple traffic accidents. This is a major issue for us. And I'm going to talk about the traffic testimony that was given in a second, but I think all of us, everyone in this room knows that if you put in place a mixed-use building like this with 30 plus units, traffic is going to increase, and it's already quite bad. The second major item that we need to consider, and honestly, I don't really think we've discussed it, is the need for additional services given, a structure and, increase in the population of the size. Have we thought about what it's going to do to the schools that I've heard and you hear residents already say is overcrowded? What is going to happen? Are we going to need to hire more police officers, public works to deal with, trash, snow removal, et cetera? I haven't heard anything about that discussed. And I think probably, the last thing that I'll mention, and it's more intangible, right, is that a structure like this is going to inherently change the character of the town. And you've heard from some of the residents what that means to them. So let's talk about traffic a little bit more if we could. So the applicant's witness testified that there'll be no detrimental impact to traffic. And with all due respect to Mr. Cannavale, there is no written traffic study. If there is one, I would hope someone would point it out to me. There is no written traffic study. There was testimony from their expert on the traffic situation, but there's no written traffic study, nor, to my knowledge, has the town done their own traffic study. So then we'll talk about the testimony maybe for a second. I took a couple of minutes this afternoon and reread the testimony, right, that was provided by their expert, who I think is sitting here with us. And the results of his study concluded that after the project is completed, that intersection of Oradell and Kindercamack Road will have, I think he described it as an A grade in terms of traffic service. So that's like the best, right? He talked about A, B, C, D, E, and F. This is going to be an A after that structure goes up. Okay? If you play the tape forward a little bit more in that meeting, right? I was asking him after his testimony about his traffic study and those intersections, and he acknowledged that that intersection is extremely busy. You know, the busiest in town. So I don't understand how, I don't understand the conclusion. It doesn't make sense that busiest intersection, put that structure there, right? And now we're going to have an A plus in terms of traffic service. It doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. And I would suggest that, again, with all due respect, you have to take that into account when you think about the conclusions brought forward by the applicant's expert, right? I live also on the reservoir side of town, and I agree with what's been said, and I think we all know this. I probably don't have to say it. During rush hour, traffic backs up all the way down to Grant and beyond. It's very difficult to get onto Oradell Avenue, and same thing going north-south on Kindercamack Road. So it's just not logical, it's not reasonable to say that this structure will have no impact to a bad traffic situation. So, it's interesting also, the developer and their experts testified that they believe the building will be largely occupied by commuters. We really don't know, right? I would imagine that there will be commuters living there. I would also think there would be people with families who maybe have been priced out of the housing market and want to find a rental to get their kids into the Oradell school system, right? We have a large hospital up on Ridgewood Avenue. There could be people who work, right, in that hospital who need to commute to get to work, right? It could be all different kinds of people. I don't think it's at all reasonable to say that most of the people living in that building will not be driving cars. It's just not, with all due respect, it's just not logical. It doesn't make sense. And I wouldn't rely on that testimony. As it relates to the need for additional services, schools, police, public works, as I said before, I haven't heard anything, any analysis on the impact to the town. So everything that I've seen, the analysis that the board has to do in weighing the positives and the negatives, to me, the negatives have not been dealt with and far outweigh the positives of this type of development. Moving on, what I would suggest is that we need to do some more analysis. Whether it's the town perhaps commissioning its own traffic study, independent traffic study, to understand the implications of this type of property certainly would make sense to me. An analysis of the impact of public service. One of the residents talked about perhaps looking for a performance bond, right, so that we learn from, right, some of the experiences of our neighbors in Emerson and that development. And then maybe the last thing I would suggest you all might consider, this is the July 4th holiday week, right? Originally, this meeting was scheduled for public comment last month when schools were still in and most residents were in town. I would suggest that you open this up for public comment in August to give all of our residents who want to attend the ability to be here and give you their thoughts as well. So in terms of next steps for the planning board, I think as you consider your conclusion on this matter, you also have to think about the precedent that you're setting, right? We do know that the Kindercamac corridor is likely to be redeveloped, and if we allow developments in our center of town, right, to move forward with these kinds of variances, you're opening the door for every other developer, right, who wants to do the same thing. So, as you've heard from other residents, I would suggest that as it's currently written, you can't approve this application, right? The applicant could certainly, reduce the size of the building, bring it into conformance with our ordinances, but as it is right now, I don't think you can approve it. But thank you very much for your consideration, and have a good night.
I would just like to make one more comment. Could we please learn Jill Barbarise, 652 Orchard Street, Barbarise. I would just like Oradell to learn from the mistake that Emerson just has right now. Busiest part of town, near a train station, and when you go to Emerson, you're all the way backed up in traffic, past the Dairy Queen. Please learn from their mistake. Vote no. Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to talk? Okay. With that, Chairman, I'll close public. Right, well, but that won't be part of public.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So, all right, so we'll close it to the public. Mr. Lampy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, there was a lot of things that were just said that, quite frankly, are not accurate, but I think everybody gets the comments for what they are. We've heard multiple meetings that this board has sat through of expert testimony regarding the project. I would say that first and foremost, Mr. Height explained how this project fulfills the zoning, the vision, and the master plan goals. I think it is very important for everybody to understand this is what was visioned for this part of town. So while some people may feel that this isn't Oradell, the applicant does not agree with that. The applicant feels that not only is this Oradell, that this particular site was zoned by this board and the council for a project of this nature, a mixed-use development with retail and residential above it. The applicant went through great lengths to mold the project based on the ordinance, reviewed the master plan, reviewed the intent of the master plan and the goals of the master plan, and this project fulfills all of those things. The applicant is seeking 4 variances, deficient for 4 parking spaces. Mr. Page, who lives in town, has been in town for many, many years, went through and gave very detailed testimony with respect to his professional opinion as to how many parking spaces the site actually will require. Under the ordinance, the project is short for 4 parking spaces. But Mr. Page's testimony was he doesn't believe that the project's going to require 75 parking spaces. That was unrefuted. That was his testimony. He's an expert in the field. It's unrefuted. With respect to the building height, 3 stories is permitted at the site. The project is 3 stories. So we can talk about the fact that we are 3.4 feet over the permitted height of 35 feet, but it's a 3-story building. Mr. Vergona explained how the height was calculated. Mr. Costa explained how the height was calculated. I believe there was 3 hours of testimony with respect to how height was calculated for this project. One of the items that was discussed at great length was the topography and the difference in floor-to-ceiling heights with respect to the units and with respect to that ground floor retail, which is required. So I think the board understands that this site is required to have retail on the ground floor with residential above it. But we went through chapter and verse and in detail how the height was calculated, all the different points that were taken, the topography. To say that the board did not take the time and that the board's professionals did not take the time and that the applicant's professionals did not take the time to go through that detailed exercise is simply untrue. The building coverage exceeds what is permitted. We have a corner lot. Project is designed to carry the corner. Mr. Vergona testified extensively as to the other buildings that he took note of, his knowledge of the town, his knowledge of the architectural elements within the town. He expressed that, in his opinion, the purpose of and what his design was attempting to do was to make traditional a little more 2025. That was the goal. I believe that he met that goal. I believe that it was very intentional to design the building with traditional and some modern updates to traditional to come up with the rendering that we see on the screen. The final variance is for parking spaces in a row. We are talking about a section of the ordinance that says if there's a surface parking lot, you're only allowed to have 10 parking spaces in a row, and then there needs to be some kind of landscaped area. The applicant is not proposing that. The applicant is proposing 15 parking spaces in a row. There was extensive testimony as to how the layout worked, how it was designed, why it was designed the way it was designed, how it works with this type of structure. Personally, in reviewing all different ordinances all over the state of New Jersey, that particular section is not really applicable to a building of this nature. That is more for a more commercial setting with large surface parking lots, which I believe Mr. Height testified is something that trends are changing. So while I can appreciate that everybody thinks that everybody has a car, I'm astonished to find out that when kids turn 17 these days, they don't want a license. I know kids that are 25 that still don't have a license. They don't have the same desires that when I couldn't wait to be 17 to get a license. That was a very big deal when I was a much younger person. That's not 2025. It's just the world is changing. It's changing every day. And I think, to talk about when something was done in 1965, in 2025, like it was yesterday, is just not, it's not fair. I think the board has sat through not only the testimony, but the vision of the town, the various changes to the ordinance, the update to the master plan, the changes in the ordinance, the introduction of the overlay zone. And now in the past month, the town has sat through the hearings with respect to the new round of affordable housing and what all of that means and what it means to Oradell. So respectfully, I understand, I get it, I do this. It's, Tuesday night in Oradell. The applicant lives in this town. He loves this town. He believes that the application is the vision of the town and is good for the town. This is permitted. We're not in front of the zoning board. We're not seeking uses that aren't permitted. This is exactly what was to be developed at this site when the zoning went into place. So are there variances involved? Of course, because zoning isn't built with specific projects already laid out. It is the framework that then the project has to be brought forward. When we look at the MLUL, when we look at the requirements under the law with respect to the granting of variances, the board understands positive and negative criteria. The board understands the intent and whether or not something is a substantial detriment to the zoning ordinance or the zone plan and the master plan. You guys sit here, you know what you're talking about, you know what we're dealing with. To hear that there's a traffic problem that already exists and then to mischaracterize Mr. Page's testimony, it's not fair to the board and it's not fair to the applicant. Finally, the applicant is complying with the requirements of the affordable housing ordinance. It's a requirement. It has to be done. The applicant understands that and is more than willing to accept that responsibility. That's the law. That's the way it works in New Jersey. There are requirements. It has to be conformed with. The applicant accepts that responsibility. But with that responsibility comes the benefit of providing the affordable housing that is necessary in the state of New Jersey. There's no question there's an affordability housing crisis in the state of New Jersey, but this is the mandate through the courts and through the legislature. This is an opportunity to put a beautiful project on the prominent corner in the town. I wouldn't say it's the busiest corner. I would say it's the most prominent corner in the town. And this, I believe, is the project to be developed there. I believe that this is what the mayor and council has mandated in terms of the zoning ordinance. I believe that this is the project brought to life within the confines of the ordinance, with the understanding, obviously, that there are deviations. I would tell you that these deviations are minor in nature given the type of project we're talking about. It's not fair to compare a variance on a project of this scale to a variance somewhere else. That's not appropriate. It's not fair. Every project is looked at in its own respect. It stands on its own proofs, and it's not in another zone in another part of town. So while I'm sorry that there's traffic backing up over the tracks currently, to say that this project is going to cause that traffic just is not truthful and is not right. So with that, this board has heard enough testimony and has heard me talk way too long. So, Chairman, I would ask that the board approve the application as it's been presented and modified and agreed to by the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I guess we should now have discussion amongst the board and before we consider any motion.
Yeah, I'd like, if you would, if anyone wants to speak up and kind of share with us here at the planning board as well as the people in the community what your thoughts are, what your reservations are. I'm not asking you to say which way you're leaning, but if you can, just discuss some of the issues that you've been thinking about. Anyone?
I would just like to clarify the variances being requested
4 parking spaces pertaining to the residential or pertaining to the whole application, including the commercial space?
Entire project,
So 4 short, residential and commercial.
under the ordinance, correct.
The height. If I recall, and if we could pull up the drawing, was the height that's over triggered by the elevator bulkhead, or is it triggered by another portion of the building, or the average?
It's to the highest point.
So was that the elevator bulkhead? Is that what triggered the height?
Correct.
Thank you. And Dave, I'm just going to jump in. That was your interpretation.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you were asking me a question.
No, I wasn't. I was asking the applicant, but I'm just asking you to affirm that if that's...
Yeah, it's the highest point of the building.
Yes.
Which is the elevator shaft?
I would say yes. Typically, that's what it is.
Yes. Okay. The building coverage, what was that percentage?
Building coverage is at 49.7% where 40 is permitted.
49.7?
Correct.
And then the last one was the consecutive parking spaces?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then there is a fifth one with respect to the lumens on lighting that will be subject to review in 6 months and will be subject to a dimmer that's able to be controlled and brought into compliance. But technically, exterior lighting does exceed the maximum average illumination.
Okay. It's difficult for me to see that on the screen, but Dave or Steve, if you can help me out. The highest elevation on the Kinderkamak side is of the building, the dimension from grade to the height of the building is what there? 34?
34.
And then what is it on the downside, the tallest part where it's the lowest topography, if you will, which would be towards the tracks, west? Please.
Dan, I'm sorry, can you make sure you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry, yes, the west height, that's correct, the west elevation closest to the tracks. What, do we have a height there? Roughly?
Not on that one.
What's the,
Garage floor, from garage floor,
okay.
which is close,
What's the,
Yeah.
we might be able to do it. Steve, there's a topography, a grade elevation on that right corner. We might be able to back into it.
average grade is 38,
Okay, thank you.
5 1/4.
How many affordable housing units is it producing?
It's producing six affordable housing units. It's producing, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to, I believe someone from the audience had another affordable housing question, so I'm hearing some information from here, so I don't know what that was or not.
It was 6 affordable housing units, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Out of 38 total units.
Correct.
Yes, 15% is required as the set aside, and they've met that.
And it's a mix, obviously, of bedroom counts as well as income requirements.
Pursuant to what's required with UHAC, as we discussed earlier.
Correct.
Any other questions, Mr. Dressel?
No, I just wanted to clarify the variance facts. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
So, I agree with some of the comments that the public shared. It would have been great if that property was a restaurant, but the owner of the property chose another path. As a member of the mayor and council, we voted to change our zoning ordinances, and I, for one, knew that was a site that if it did get redeveloped, chances are it was going to be developed into a mixed-use, multifamily development project, and it would be the first floor retail with 2 stories of apartments on top of the first floor retail. So I understand the concerns. I too have concerns about traffic, but as far as the project itself, it's in line with what we expected when we redid the ordinances to be able to settle with our affordable housing obligations, both in the 3rd round and the 4th round. So this particular lot was approved for the structure that's being presented to us. Yes, there are variances, but comparatively speaking, they're not that significant for a project of this scope. So I just wanted to state my position before we continue our discussions.
Anyone else? Mr. Scalzione? No?
Well, I just wanted to say, I mean, I fully appreciate the concerns I fully appreciate the concerns of the residents and their comments about traffic and density. I'm a commuter. I know the lot very well. I experience the traffic there. But I also, as with Councilman Carnival, also recognize the fact that the nature of the variances are relatively minor. The fact that it's before this board and not the zoning board, I think, indicates that. From my perspective, looking pragmatically at it, I think when I look at this development, I personally think that the design of it is attractive, brick and stone. I do think it conforms, generally speaking, to the rest of the downtown. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you.
Greg, I do just have 1 or 2 more questions just to clarify. Was there any testimony that I missed, to be sure? I just want to be clear. If I missed testimony, or was it only public comment?
It was only public comment.
And were any of the parking issues addressed that we had raised at the prior meeting?
Yes, it was in the letter that was sent to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And last question, how many square feet of retail space is there? Can you give me a rough idea?
5,000.
5,000.
I think it's a little bit more than 5,000, but roughly 5,000.
So I have some comments if no one else will.
Thank you.
No? Okay. So I too worry, as many people here tonight worry about impact on the town on many levels. Traffic is a big concern. I also live east of Kindercamack Road, and I travel every day to the post office and to the UPS store and to FedEx. So I deal with that frustration. I have to get out onto Oradell Avenue at rush hour traffic at times in the morning, and it is absolutely insane trying to get over the bridge and onto Kindercamack Road. Veldren is also a little tricky. But in Veldren, where it intersects Oradell Avenue, as opposed to the offset of Maple Avenue, it gets very, very difficult, especially if you need to make a left to go east. You don't have the right-of-way. The people on Maple have the right-of-way, and the people on Oradell have the right-of-way, and you're just sitting there on Veldren hoping for a break in traffic. It's very frustrating. But unfortunately, this property is basically what was envisioned for this lot. In the 2018 master plan, it's part of what we call the overlay zone. It allows for mixed use, first floor retail, second floor apartments, and that's what is here. The building is within basically 35 feet, which is the ordinance for all properties along Kindercamack Road. It's actually for multiple zones, but for all properties at Kindercamack Road, it's 35 feet. Just an interesting little bit of information, the Bank of America is actually almost 36 feet, and this property is 38 feet, so this property is just almost 3 feet higher than the Bank of America building. And that is not significant. When you consider driving by on Oradell, Kindercamack Road, you would not know that the property met the ordinance. So the building height variance to me seems very, very small. As far as the on-site parking, this property is providing 81 spaces. And, you know, that's a lot of spaces. This is a large enough lot so that residents, as well as people wanting to shop in these stores or work in these storefronts, will have a place to park. I know that the lot behind it gets busy, and yes, with COVID, it's even busier. I see that every day. But that doesn't mean there are no spaces for people to frequent this property, and the variance of 4 units out of 85 units is also very, very small. The other thing that I struggle with is the size of the building. Now, before I say that, in terms of the lot coverage, that's what's covering the lot. The setbacks is what we use to control the size of the building generally, and the setbacks are all within what's in the code. The front setbacks are 15 feet, the side and rear yard setbacks are 10 feet, and that is very generous for a Kinderkermack Road corridor property. As an example, the pet store further down on Kinderkermack Road is a mixed-use property with an apartment above. The Love of Pets, or for pets, I don't recall the specific name, bear with me. But that property has no setback, no back setback, no front setback, no side setbacks. It's built right up to the property line when they built those buildings back in the day. And this structure is set back quite a bit. So they're not looking for any variances there. The only thing that I concern myself with is the overall size of the building. And, you know, it calculates out to 49%. And I thought to myself, all right, well, how big is that in relation to a building that's almost 200 feet long? And I come up with just over 3,000 square feet. To me, that's basically 3 apartments. You know, apartments nowadays range from 900 to 1,100, depending on the number of bedrooms. So to me, it seems like there are 3 apartments high. So right now, they're proposing, bear with me, I lost my place, 38 units. And, you know, if they came in at 34, it would have been a no-brainer. It would have been a guarantee. But with 38, that gives me some pause, and I struggle with that. You know, 34 units, 2 cars per unit, 76 cars, as opposed to 64 cars 68 cars if we had less units. So, look, I can't tell you I'm happy with this project, but I can tell you that nothing good will happen if we do not move forward with projects like this within the municipality. We have obligations from the state, from affordable housing. We have vacant property that needs to be developed, that people are going to come into our community asking for us to consider their applications, and in most cases, it'll be much larger than what we see here. So those are my thoughts. Anybody else?
I'll provide my thoughts. So I'm new to the planning board, new to this process. I haven't spoken a lot. My wife grew up in this town. We moved to this town. I hope to have grandkids at some point in this town. I coach a lot of sports. One of the things that I'm concerned about long term is when we talked about the affordable housing rules and regulations, about being bullied by outside developers and losing control. I think in this instance, you know, we've talked a lot about, you know, the significance of the variances given this project. I think that a project like this makes sense. One of the things that I like is that it's being developed by somebody in town. And so my big concern is how we manage moving forward with our affordable housing obligations and how we protect from being overdeveloped from outside developers.
Thank you. Anyone else? Having seen none, anyone like to make a motion either to approve or deny this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve calendar number 162-25, 420 Kinderkamack Road, subject to all of the conditions that have been stated in our engineer's letter, our planner's letter. Mr. Giblin, you have all that documented in terms of the conditions subject to approval?
Yes.
Okay. Can you?
Well, just the only one that I had in addition to what Mr. Lampe discussed tonight was that one of the affordable housing units will be a very low-income unit. I don't know if that's required under UHAC, but they've agreed to it.
So once again, I'd like to make a motion subject to all of the conditions and requirements that have been identified to approve the application for calendar number 162-25, 420 Kinderkamack Road.
Can I just, before, I want to ask if you'd entertain another condition. The condition is, if it's favorably voted on, one of the conditions being that the materials proposed are kept to and not changed due to cost or what have you, that they're proposing brick, we're going to get the brick. They're proposing stone, we're going to get the stone, and it won't turn out to be the foam-based stucco that deteriorates and doesn't wear well. I'd like to add that as a condition. If it's getting voted on favorably, someone in exchange and understanding for the variances that they're asking for.
Mr. Atkinson, is this something that's specified within the plans?
The stone that they're looking.
Yeah. The materials that are being used.
I mean, I know they presented stuff during the hearing. I don't recall if it was specifically stone or not, as far as that side of it. Do you recall, Mr. Lampe?
Mr. Lampe, would you like to speak to that?
I don't believe that it was identified specifically by type. Obviously, the brick is brick.
Okay.
But I don't think that the stonework was specified on the plan as to what that stonework was.
Well, I don't
Metalling, I believe, same thing in terms of, I don't think it was called out in that regard.
I recall the architect stating that the mansard roof section was metal.
Right.
Yes.
The brick was brick, the stone was stone. He did not specify the type of stone. I don't think we're looking for that, are we,
No,
Mr.
I'm
Dressel?
not. But it's not. It's stone is stone. So if we look at what stone means, there's a definition, and it's more of a natural material. It's not a synthetic stucco. It's not a pseudo stone.
Oh.
It is stone.
I believe that is on the plan as stone, metal, brick, and the applicant would agree to that.
Okay. And would you agree to that as part of the terms of the agreement?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
All right, then, Mr. Gibbling, you have that?
I'm having it now. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion, but we have no second. Would anyone like to second this, Mr. Carnevale's motion for approval?
Second.
All right. Mr. Decking, can you?
Yeah, before we take the vote, Mr. Giblin, Mr. Dressel came in late. Is he permitted to vote on this application?
Yeah, there was no testimony given. I don't believe that he missed, other than the
Okay.
one comment about the that was provided to the board, which I'm sure he received a letter from Mr. Lampe.
Yes. And Mr. Dressel, have you listened? Have you missed any meetings?
Not on this. Not that I know of. This application. No, I've been here for all the testimony.
Okay. Very good.
The previous meeting, which was the master plan meeting, the special meeting, I did not attend. But prior to that, I was here.
Wasn't presented.
Correct. Right.
Okay. And Mr. Forte is going to vote as a regular member. Mr. Forte?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Dressel?
Yes.
Mr. Kang?
No.
Mr. Hines?
Yes.
Mr. Carnival?
Yes.
Mr. Scalcione?
Yes, I'd also like to mention, again, I share the residents' concerns. I believe that this particular project was relatively minor in terms of variances. I anticipate future projects being much more ambitious. I vote yes.
And Mr. Darian.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Carnival, we are...
That is all we have, Mr. Chairman, for subdivision, site drainage, and soil moving for tonight.
I'll wait just a moment. Committee reports, building, business, and signage, Mr.?
Nothing to report.
Nothing, Mr. King? Okay. Regional Planning Coordination, Mr. Koth is not here. Zoning, Mr. Fledging is also not here. Master Plan, which is me, I'm here, but we have not had a meeting. We've been preoccupied with our fair share agreement. Historical Preservation, Mr. Carnival?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question with regard to master plan. What's the timing of getting back on track with the re-examination project?
Our goal is to finalize it in September, so we only have really one more month. And now that the affordable housing plan is completed, we have very minor edits. What I'll do is I'll share the latest document with the committee once again. If you have any comments or edits, let me know, and I'll schedule a meeting with our architect to do the final edits, and then we can review it at the next meeting. So that's our timeline.
Thank you.
Nothing on historical preservation? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
No, Mr. Chairman, nothing to report.
Thank you. Old business. Anybody have any old business that they'd like to discuss tonight?
Well, old business in regards to financial disclosures, they're done. Everybody's done it.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, and also the cybersecurity.
Yes.
I think everybody's taken care of.
Good.
And finally, if the mayor and council could make some decision on the soil movement.
I was just going to say, for Mr. Kang, we will definitely
Yeah, it seems
address that, yes.
Good.
a
That's
lot
all
of
I-
work for somebody to come in for 140 cubic yards to be moved.
I agree wholeheartedly, and we will get it on the agenda for amending the current ordinance.
Any new business, anyone? No new business?
I just want to piggyback, every application that we get, you kind of always learn a little something. And I think there's some issues that were brought up here that we maybe should entertain some suggestions on clarifications or modifications to the zoning ordinance. And so it's just a point of note that I'd like to make, going forward as discussion at another time.
The zoning board sends a letter to the mayor and council every year. Basically, it's telling them in layman's terms what ordinances are constantly being modified. And it's just to make a recommendation, hey, you may think of these simply because they're constantly coming in front of our boards and we're constantly overriding whatever the ordinance is. I don't know if there's anything we would like to do, but that's kind of in the spirit of that.
Yeah, I mean, we can have, as a board, we can have an opinion on zoning. I think we're not precluded from having an opinion on.
No, I know, but you'd have to be specific as to like what,
Yes.
what what issues, yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. Any other new business, anything? Having seen none. Next is open to public. Non-agenda items. Mr. Atunis? We have a lot of people, so
Paul Atsunas, 50 Beverly Road. Expansion of the CBD overlay to the B3 zone is just what developers wanted. Eliminating the B3 zone and naming it the B1 zone negates the character of the Manor area. The Manor area is unique in itself. By doing this, developers may try to buy up single-family homes and build apartment rental units, housing that is allowed in the B1 zone, thus making the Manor area more dense. a more densely populated area. This is stupid, and stupid is dense. Densification, which I coined the word back then, is stupidity, brought up by us from the planning subcommittee, who are the subcommittee persons that did this. Now, back in the old days, I talked about density equals the population divided by the area. We should always keep that in mind. I still had a chart that I showed back in the 66 Kinderkamack Road about what was happening. This was the density of the area. With the densification, we would have had this. I think that's what we're going to get here now. So, thus allowing for underbuilding parking and underground parking allows the architect and developer to construct a larger building which increases density for each lot. Thus, density and stupidity are synonymous. Further, the 15-foot buffer zone between commercial properties and residential needs to be revisited and stated in the ordinance committee to follow through to protect residential properties and life from commercial encroachment. Thus, I urge the planning board to rescind and restore the B3 zone. Because they said nothing had changed in the B3 zone. Everything was the same when Caroline had stated the different areas that concerned that it was same as the overlay zone. Okay, so we changed the B3 zone. So what I'm afraid of is somebody trying to buy up homes. Note, affordable housing or any housing should not be built on contaminated land, period. And that's what we have there, contaminated land in the B1 zone now. In two places now, right? So if the B1 zone is to remain, the area would need a new speed limit because it's 30 miles an hour and the B1 zone is 25 miles an hour now. So you got to lower the zoning. It's bad enough at 30. So we got to, if we're going to make this that, we have to have a 25 mile per hour zoning speed limit in that area. Also, I think we're going to need a traffic light down there too, with more construction on Kinderkamack Road and more traffic. So we're going to need 25 mile an hour speed limit and a new traffic light, either at the corner of Berkshire and Kinderkamack or on Argyle. And then note number 3 that I have is forbidding the consolidation of lots in the manor area. We need an ordinance forbidding the consolidation of lots, because once they start do that, it's going to change the whole area. And you want to build apartment houses down there. This is what I think they're driving at. Okay? Developers would love to buy three homes and build an apartment house there. Okay? And I'm sure affordable housing would like you to do that. But that's going to change our whole life down there. We can't have that. You got to stand strong on this. And as far as the what was the other thing here? Oh, the ordinance. Now that we have an underground building parking that you've approved tonight, this is the first of its kind, okay, that I know of. And I would like to limit any further underground parking and under-building parking. Whatever we have, if there is another one here in the town, that's it. We have to have a new ordinance. No more underground parking, no more under-building parking, because we're going to get these big projects. I hope I made myself clear. I'm disappointed by tonight, but you did what you wanted to do, what you had to do. I guess they twisted your arms on it. And affordable housing may change, may change it, but it's too late on this one. So we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Sam Tripsis, 327 Maple Avenue. Just want to comment back on the master plan in 2018. Some of you were there, and the rooms were filled. And I don't recall anyone being in favor of what just got approved tonight. It's in the documents. How come that doesn't come up? You know, I mean, to hear what I heard, does anybody read correspondence? There were a stack of letters. I forgot to bring them. Everyone said, please do not go 3 stories. That was the most common comment. And if this project wouldn't have happened, if you made it 2 stories, they wouldn't have done it, and maybe we would have got a different application. You know, I lose sleep over this. I've read that master plan over and over. I read the drafts. I tried to be ahead of you guys, and still, several years later, we still get this kind of outcome. And this is the beginning. And it does, the attorney's wrong. It sets precedent. They're going to be pointing out that building and say, that's what Oradell looks like, so why not another one with the hodgepodge materials? So, but I'll ask that question. Did anybody read the correspondence? I know you probably did, Mr. Darian, correct? Did you notice anybody saying, please give us 3 stories?
I feel like I have to respond. So
Yeah.
Sure.
I just want to clarify, Steve, that particular lot, as per our zoning ordinances and the overlay zoning, was approved for 3 stories?
Yes.
By accident. Because it was stated over and over, Mr. Carnival, over and over, that east side was going to be up to Mill Lane. It got slipped in the wording. When you read it 4 or 5 times, and it just says Oradell Avenue, and that changed everything. Nobody thought it was going to end at Oradell Avenue. It was going to be 2 stories. And Mr. Darian, before you speak, you said we're doing it for the residents. That's why we made the concession of only 2 stories. You said it.
Mr. Tripsis, nothing in the 2018 master plan and nothing in this re-exam document is happening by mistake or accident.
All right.
We went back and forth endlessly over how many floors, at what point, from what street. It's actually spelled out. It is a little confusing because everyone just assumes when you start reading the description, it starts off by saying everything on the east side of Kindercamac Road is 2 stories, everything on the west side of Kindercamac is 3 stories, but then it continues on and states north of Oradell Avenue, it's also 3 stories. And we were proposing, I think you remember this, we were proposing 3 stories on both sides of Kindercamac Road.
Right.
And you opposed, and the residents, which I understand, of Orchard and those areas behind Chase Bank, they didn't want that. And we left those areas as is. They're not part of that zone.
Protest. That was a protest.
And so I just want to state for the record, you know, there was no accident, and it is also clearly stated in the 240 building codes in terms of the ordinances. It is clearly stated in there.
Greg, can you just, I think you can, speak to the impetus behind increasing to 3 stories? There was a rationale that was kind of driving that, which we were kind of addressing at the time, the affordable housing requirements then. Am I correct in remembering that?
Not really. The building height was always proposed as 35 feet. It's 35 feet in most areas, including, I think, the B1, the B3, and maybe even part of the B2.
But the number of stories, I thought it was driven by affordable housing.
And when it came to the master plan, there was conversation about how many stories. And it was actually originally 3 stories, and it was lowered to 2 stories. And the thought process is that the properties on the east side of Kindercamack Road are higher
Right.
than the properties either on Maple Avenue.
Recall that.
And so in that case, 2 stories made sense. If on the west side, the properties are higher, they're on the hill. But at the end of the day, they're both able to build to 35 feet.
But not 3 stories.
That's 3
But to-
stories or 2 stories
But to
is
Mr.
35 feet.
Dressel's point,
My point is, what was driving the stories was attempting to address the requirements of providing affordable housing, being able to provide affordable housing units.
I don't know if there was a connection between affordable units and the number of floors.
there absolutely was.
There was?
Yeah.
Was, yes.
So just for clarification, and I'll let our expert speak, but if you recall from the round 3 housing plan, we had to reach an agreement with Fair Share Housing.
Right.
And therefore, we had to adjust our ordinances to demonstrate the potential for the construction of units that would contribute to our affordable housing obligation.
To facilitate that, right?
Yes, and that's why we created the overlay zone,
Right.
in order to reach agreement and demonstrate that if a developer wanted to come in, they would be able to, on the west side of Kindercamack Road, south of Oradell Avenue, build a unit that would be first floor retail and then 2 stories of apartments.
And wasn't it the 2 stories provided it had an affordable housing component?
Yes, that's if they
Provided it had so if it didn't have an affordable housing component, it could only be 2 stories.
correct. They would. There was the underlying zoning ordinances, and then there was the overlay. So Caroline, if you just want to.
Actually, you did a really great job explaining
That's
it.
because I listened to you a lot. So.
So obviously I wasn't here as part of the 2018 master plan or your round 3 housing element, but what I wanted to note is, to your point, the difference in number of stories is actually contained within your settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center. And to the councilman's point, you, I am assuming, went through multiple mediation and settled multiple mediations with Fair Share Housing Center and any other interested parties, as well as most likely settlement hearings with Fair Share Housing Center and other interested parties. And what I'm assuming happened is that there was an agreement that you came to address your obligation. And as we've discussed, you have over 300 units of unmet need from your round 1, 2, and 3 combined. In fact, well over 300 units of unmet need. And this was one of the mechanisms that was included in the settlement agreement to meet that, to address the unmet need, which prior to round 4 did not need to be a one-for-one type accounting. It just needed to provide opportunities for the provision of affordable housing. And to whomever said it, your point that there's the B1 zone. This is an overlay zone. So this type of zoning or use was overlaid on top of the existing zoning. In other words, you have a choice. You can develop to the B1 standards, or you can develop to the CBD overlay zoning. And there are differences within the overlay zoning, including the inclusionary development, the removal of the FAR ordinance, and then certain height limitations, although always 35 feet. Certain areas were 2 stories and certain areas were 3 stories. So I would be fairly certain that these things were all discussed as part of your negotiations with the Fair Share Housing Center.
So to your comments, we were kind of forced into showing some effort to providing an opportunity to be able to create affordable housing units.
Right.
And that was the impetus behind pushing to 3 stories, and as a concession or a compromise or a way of saying, okay, well, let's just, instead of doing it on both sides, do it on one. It's the least invasive, but it's trying to work both sides, understanding what the town as a public entity wanted, as all the residents wanted and came to, as well as the obligation to showing the affordable housing that we were doing something to enable affordable housing units to be built.
Okay.
That's so, I just, a little bit of a, it's not what we want, so to speak. It's what we were trying to do to facilitate the job that we were given as a board at hand.
I remember the discussion well. In fact, you were vocal.
Yes.
About how do they have to go 3 stories, whatever. But,
Right.
okay, now there's the big question. What's going to happen now north of Orchard Street on the west side? Because originally, Fair Share Housing said you didn't have to go north of Orchard. We said, yes, we don't mind going. And a letter went out saying we're going to be 3 stories north of Orchard up to Fenner and Essler. Next thing you know, that all those letters that I mentioned were redacted, but we could tell who asked for that. A developer asked for that to go beyond. And it's a shame because we almost did go beyond when we didn't have to. So sometimes when you say no mistakes, it's not exactly a mistake, but it's almost like, wow, we almost went down that route. So do you recall that Fair Share Housing did say 2 stories on the west side up to Orchard Street?
Are you addressing me,
It's clear in my
Sam?
mind.
Are you asking me?
Well, whoever wants to answer, whoever was there.
So you have to remember, this is the planning board, we're responsible for the master plan.
Yeah.
At the same time, in 2018, we were developing the fair share plan, which was done through the subcommittee for affordable housing with the mayor and council. So we were not privy to those conversations, so I can't tell you the motivation and, what happens, unfortunately.
It appeared that a developer drove that. That he had a property there and wanted to extend it.
I could tell you that developers are constantly pushing the town, pushing our boards, and I don't think they're setting policy.
Okay. All right, so...
Pretty comfortable saying
all right.
that.
The last thing, and I'll finish. So what's going to happen? We have a couple applications coming up in that little section. Is that going to be 2 stories max, or is that going to be 3? Because this is a very...
I think he's talking about 455 Kinderkamak, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, I am. Yeah. Because that's probably soon.
Well, no, there's no application,
Yeah.
to my
All right.
knowledge, submitted. I don't think we should be respectfully.
Yeah, we can't speculate on an application that has not come
Yeah,
before
I
the
would, or
board.
something that's within the fair share plan, which is, presently within the challenge period. I respectfully, I would suggest that, the plans that,
Yeah.
at this point, what we've said, what we're going to, I think that the board, I don't want to speak for any members of the board, but I think the board has said what it's going to say.
Okay. I wasn't going to say 455, but it could have been any one of those Queen Anne's that happens to be north of Orchard. Because you could get an application on another one, All right. I think it's a easy question and an easy answer. And I hope we stick with the 2 stories. That's all. And then we won't have to battle it out. You wouldn't have to get all your residents out here. They can say, well, the planning board is going to do their job, or if it goes to the planning board. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public? Having seen none, I close to the public. Where's my agenda? I think that's it. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, thank you.